Buddy, it's Randy Ray, the literate Texan, and I wish I were welcoming you back to Driftwood Ranch, but as you can see, I'm still here in the hospital. But the show must go on, and I promised to do a to be read video for Horror Mayhem yesterday when I made my announcement video, and I'm going to list the other participants and the co-hosts in the comments below so you can go see what they've had to say about Horror Mayhem coming up. But just to be brief, a reminder of what the Horror Mayhem event is about. It's an event where we read short horror fiction and expose ourselves to a lot of it. And this year, there are two guidelines. They're very loosey-goosey guidelines. You don't have to follow them at all if you don't want to. You can just read horror. But the first one is that we're reading stuff that's under 250 pages. And we encourage to go real low. There's nothing wrong with reading a 30-page short story for one of your things. But I wanted to talk a little bit about how I came up with my TBR. Excuse me, I have to stay hydrated. But I wanted to talk a little bit about how I came up with my TBR. I used to own a bookstore that specialized in horror books. And when I did, I bought a book by multiple authors called The Horror Book of Lists. And I drew a lot of inspiration because it has all these cool lists of books, and they're organized in different ways. The first chapter in the book is about horror movies, and so I just skipped past it entirely and went straight to chapter 2. For the Love of God, Montresor, the Literature of Dread. And, I forgot. The theme this year for Horror Mayhem is Decades of Dread. So you're going to try to read, say, one story from 1850, one story from the 1860s, so you get a broad representation of the history of it. And, if you want to, you could just do 60s, 70s, and 80s, or you could do 90s, 2000s, the naughty oddies, 2010s, and 2020s. However you want to do it. Or you could just skip that entirely and just read horror all month. But So anyway, this chapter is called The Literature of Dread, and so this is all about horror fiction and horror books. And the first list they have is 20 great openings in horror fiction. So this is a real good place to get ideas to read. But it's also a lot of fun because number one is, last night I dreamt I went to Mandalay again. Now, I'm sure you all know that's from Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. But what a wonderful opening line, and a lot of horror books do have great opening lines. Number two, This Is What Happened, The Mist by Stephen King. The Mist might be one of the rare works by Stephen King that's under 250 words, so that might be a really good one to read. It's also wonderful. I don't think that's a great opening line, but, they didn't ask me. This is really good, though. Number three, This morning, I put ground glass in my wife's eyes. She didn't mind. She didn't make a sound. She never does. That's from The Deadline by Dennis Etchison. If you've never read Dennis Etchison, he is terrific. He died not too terribly long ago. And on my horror bookstore website that I owned, I used to have biographies of various horror writers. And Dennis Etchison was one that actually wrote in and corrected my biography of him, which was really cool. Number four, this is really great. The book is probably too long to read unless you're just going to ignore the guidelines, but this is a great first line. What was the worst thing you've ever done? I won't tell you that, but I'll tell you the worst thing that ever happened to me. The most dreadful thing. And that's from Ghost Story by Peter Straub. And if you've seen the book, it's really thick. Peter Straub's he's like Stephen King. He writes these 400 or 500 page novels. Number five, Jack Torrance thought, the vicious little prick. That's from The Shining by Stephen King. I don't think that's a great opening line. I'm just going to skip number six. It's lousy. This is a little-known horror novel called Testament by David Morrell. David Morrell's the guy who invented Rambo and First Blood, and he's a great novelist. But number seven, it was the last morning the four of them would ever be together. The man and his wife, his daughter and his son. But anyway, Testament is a truly disturbing horror novel. It's really good if you get a chance to read it. It's too long for the guidelines, but it's still really good. Number eight from Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice, which is really, really long, but it's a pretty good first line. I see, said the vampire thoughtfully, and slowly he walked across the room towards the window. Ooh, number 9. Sometimes a man grows tired of carrying everything the world heaps upon his head. That's from Exquisite Corpse by Poppy Z. Bright. If you haven't read Poppy Z. Bright, you deserve to. She's wonderful. Then there's a really long one at number 10 from American Psycho. We're just going to skip that. I don't recommend that book to anybody. I'm going to skip the next few. The Call of Cthulhu's at number 14. This is a really good first line. The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. But I'll probably be reading The Call of Cthulhu by H.P. Lovecraft. If not, I'll be reading one of his other short stories because I've got his complete works. So number 15's long, but it's really good. It's a long opening line, but the book's not long. No live organism can continue for long to exist sanely under conditions of absolute reality. Even larks and katydids are supposed by some to dream. Hill House, not sane, stood by itself against its hills, holding darkness within. It had stood so for 80 years and might stand for 80 more. Within, walls continued upright, bricks met neatly, floors were firm, and doors were sensibly shut. Silence lay steadily against the wood and stone of Hill House, and whatever walked there walked alone. That's really good. That's very good. Anyway, I'm going to skip the rest of these. But there's 20 of them there, and they're pretty cool. But I want to get to some of these other lists, too. This is interesting. The 56 best-selling horror books since 1900. And, of course, this list is out of date now because time has passed, but a lot of these are good. And 1902, Hound of the Baskervilles by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was in the top 100. It was number 7 of this time period. 1923 was a book by Black Oxen by Gertrude Atherton, A Tale of Youth Rejuvenated. I don't know anything about that. I might find out, though. In 1938, Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I think that may be short enough, but she managed to make the top 10 2 years in a row. She was in the top 10 in 38 and 39. This is pretty cool. 1946, The Snake Pit by Mary Jane Ward. I've never heard of this before. The first big real-life horror story, a precursor in many ways to Stephen King's tales of horror in modern life. That sounds pretty cool. On the Beach from 1957, really great book by Neville Shute. It's a frightening, futuristic vision of the horror that the atomic age might bring. You wouldn't think of that necessarily as a horror novel, more of a science fiction novel, but it is pretty horrifying. 1967, Rosemary's Baby by Ira Levin. Great book. Number 10, Daphne du Maurier come back with The House on the Strand from 1969. And then, of course, in 1971, The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty. I don't know if it's under 250 words or not, but it's a really fast read. I read it last year. It was good. Number 9, The Other by Thomas Tryon. 1974, Jaws by Peter Benchley. I've got a copy of it now, and I'm going to read it. The Dead Zone by Stephen King, 1979. From 1979 onward, it's all Stephen King. Firestarter, Cujo, Different Seasons, Pet Sematary, Christine. The Talisman was number 1 in 1984. Skeleton Crew's a collection of short stories. It was 1985. It's really long. The Tommyknockers about UFOs. Misery. I mean, it is all about Stephen King after 1979. He owned the market until 1988 when Anne Rice's Queen of the Damned hit the top 10. And then Stephen King's back with The Dark Half in 89, 4 Past Midnight in 1990, The Stand, then Anne Rice. It's all about Anne Rice and Stephen King after a certain point. And I think we've gone past that now. You've got Stephen Graham Jones writing and among others. Paul Tremblay is also writing. But yeah, so it's all Stephen King and Anne Rice from here on out until you get up to about the year 2000. Then you start getting a little more diversified. Because that's when Larry B. Jenkins and Tim LaHaye started putting out those Christian horror novels, which I carried in my bookstore because occasionally I'd get people from the Baptist church come in and they would complain that I was doing the devil's work by specializing in horror novels. And I said, we've got a whole section devoted to Christian horror over here. So, Anyway, this is just some examples. I'm going to wrap up because I don't want to make you listen to me too long. In 2005, there was a novel by Elizabeth Kostova called The Historian that was good, and it made an appearance. I can't miss this one. Stephen King's got 10 favorite horror novels and short stories. So this is a list you need to have. Stephen King's an interesting guy. He shares what he likes to read. Number 1 is Ghost Story by Peter Straub, which is terrific. Number 2 is Dracula by Bram Stoker. Obviously, Stephen King's a big fan of Dracula because if you've read Salem's Lot, it's basically just Dracula retold, and it's an excellent retelling. I've read Salem Lot a dozen times, love it every time. Number 3 is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, the quintessential haunted house novel, by the way, and it's definitely under 250 pages. I'll probably read it. Number 4, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. That's on my list. Number 5, Burnt Offerings by Robert Marasco. Burnt Offerings is a very, very clear influence on The Shining. It's a haunted house novel, too. I know The Shining's a haunted hotel, but it's very similar. Number 6, Casting the Runes is a short story by M.R. James, which I have not read yet. Number 7 is 2 Bottles of Relish by Lord Dunsany. Number 8, The Great God Pan by Arthur Machen. I haven't read those yet, but I want to. Number 9 is The Color Out of Space by H.P. Lovecraft. I've read all of H.P. Lovecraft's work, and The Color Out of Space might be my favorite. Number 10 is called The Upper Berth by F. Marion Crawford. Never heard of it, but yeah, I definitely want to check that out. And then there's other top 10 lists in here, but yeah, if you can find yourself a copy of the Book of Lists Horror, you should check it out because, like I say, that's where I'm getting a lot of my ideas for my to-be-read list. I'm glancing through here to see if there's anything I'm missing that you really need to know about. Yes, there's a book called The House Next Door by Anne Rivers Siddons. It's my favorite haunted house novel, and it's unique because the story's told from the perspective of the neighbors, not the residents in the house. And it's so cool. And nothing happens in the book that is guaranteed to be supernatural. Any of it could have just happened, but it keeps happening. And you get to see multiple families live in that house because you're getting it from the perspective of the neighbors. Normally in a horror novel that's based on a haunted house, family moves in, family has problems, the American dream turns into an American nightmare and they leave and the book's over. But in this one, you get to see 3 or 4 different families and their experiences there. Magic by William Goldman is a recommendation on one of these lists. It's mercifully short. Also, William Goldman's a great writer. He wrote the screenplay to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. He wrote The Princess Bride. And anyway, Magic is the one where it was made into a movie. And Anthony Perkins plays the ventriloquist and the dummy, and it's really, really great. There's stuff in here. Replay by Ken Grimwood is a horror novel that has a kind of Groundhog Day plot. It's surprisingly good. Then they have also horror anthologies. Kirby McCauley is a famous horror editor and literary agent too. And he lists The Omnibus of Crime by Dorothy Sayers. Apparently in The Omnibus of Crime, half of the book is devoted to the supernatural. Number 2, Sleep No More is edited by August Derleth. That's got to be good. Number 3, They Walk Again, edited by Colin de Lamar. That's got to be great. That's such a terrific title. Number 4, New Terrors, edited by Ramsey Campbell. Ramsey Campbell's a brilliant writer. He's probably a good anthologist. Great Tales of Terror and the Supernatural is a classic. I think you got to buy it used, though, and I have a copy on the way. Number 6, The Fontana Book of Great Ghost Stories is edited by Robert Aikman. Robert Aikman's a terrific writer, too. Number 7, Terror by Gaslight, edited by Hugh Lamb. These must be short stories. If it's by Gaslight, they must be set in the 1890s, probably. Terror in the Modern Vein is at number 8, edited by Donald Wollheim. And The Darkness Falls, edited by Boris Karloff. I don't believe that Boris Karloff really edited that. There's another editor listed, Edmund Spear. He probably did all the work. They probably just wanted to get Boris Karloff's picture on the cover. Number 10, The Dark Descent, edited by David G. Hartwell. So, yeah, and there's more lists. I've really scratched the surface here. But another source that I've gone to look for recommendations for short fiction from various decades is Michael Dirda. Michael Dirda is the literary critic for the Washington Post. He's semi-retired now from that position, and he hasn't posted a new review over there in like 3 months, but he hasn't officially retired. But I think the change in ownership and editorship style over at Washington Post has bothered him quite a bit. But if you go to Google and you type in Michael Dirda horror, you will find multiple articles where he recommends multiple short books and multiple authors, multiple anthologies, and that's where I got a huge bit of my to be read pile too. Like I say, I've got 47 books in there. Some of them I'm just going to read excerpts from. You know, obviously I'm not going to read a whole collection of Stephen King short stories, but I've got 3 or 4 of his anthologies in there, and some of his stories are definitely going to make the cut. I can't do a month of horror fiction without talking about Stephen King. You just can't do it. So anyway, thank you for watching, as always. I hope you're going to participate in Horror Mayhem. Please, in the comments, let me know what you're going to read for Horror Mayhem. You know, do you have any kind of to be read list already? You're just going to wing it? You know, you could pull that off. How many books and stories do you plan to read for Horror Mayhem? How involved are you going to get? Let me know. I'm curious. And I respond to every comment that I get. Also, I always remind everybody of these 2 very, very important things. Stay hydrated and stay sexy. Thank you, BookTube.